I'm sharing 45 inspiring and creative ways to transform inexpensive thrift store finds into high-end home decor. I saw this tower of plant stands or some kind of risers. I'm not 100% sure what this thing is, but the moment I saw it, I knew exactly what I was going to do with it. Now, this plant stand riser is pretty beat up. It's got a whole lot of scratches, some big chunks taken out, a bunch of divots. So the first thing that we need to do is sand it down. I got a fine grit sanding paper and I smoothed out all of those bumps. Next, I took a damp rag and wiped off all the dust and debris so we had a clean surface. I took this piece outside and I sprayed it in some white gloss Rust-Oleum spray paint. Once everything was completely covered, I let this piece dry for 1 hour. I flipped it over and I painted the sides once again and also painted the top. Once everything was saturated in the paint, I let it dry for another hour. What we're going to do to this piece is turn it into a container. So we need to create some panels to fit in those big holes that are on all 4 sides. We're going to make those panels with some canvas. I had a 4-pack of these small rectangular canvas pieces, and they will fit perfectly in those vacant spaces. Of course, we could leave these canvas pieces plain, but we're going to jazz them up. I have this book of scrapbook paper that I purchased at Michael's, and inside is this gorgeous white and gold floral print. I love the sheen that's on this paper. It's just so pretty. There were only 3 pieces in this book of cardstock, so we're going to work with what we have. Even though I have 4 panels, it's okay, we'll make it work. So what I did was I put my canvas over the scrapbook paper, I traced it out, and then I cut out the 3 pieces, and with the remaining scrapbook paper, I pieced 2 pieces together to create 1 full panel. To adhere the paper to my canvas, I'm going to be using some Mod Podge and a sponge brush. I took this Mod Podge and I painted it all over the surface of this canvas. I added a liberal amount of Mod Podge to the canvas. I made sure it was completely covered in the Mod Podge. Then I took my scrapbook paper and I placed it over the top. I smoothed it out to make sure that there were no air bubbles trapped underneath the paper. Once it was in place, I moved on to the remaining 3 canvas rectangles. I did the same thing. I added the Mod Podge to the surface of the canvas and then placed my scrapbook paper over the top and pressed it firmly to the canvas. Once all of my pieces were Mod Podged to the canvas, I added a top layer of Mod Podge. Again, I added a liberal amount. I wanted to make sure that the surface was completely covered in the Mod Podge. I repeated this process with each of my 4 pieces. Once they were all completely covered in the Mod Podge, I let them dry for 3 hours. So while we're waiting for this Mod Podge to dry, let's add some feet to the bottom of our container. These feet are actually knobs that I purchased in the clearance section at Hobby Lobby. I love the size, the color, and the shape of these beautiful knobs, and they were only 39 cents a piece, which is a bargain. I love shopping in the clearance section. You can always find some amazing pieces at affordable prices. So we want to attach our feet to the container and we want to do it evenly. So I got out a ruler and a pencil and I marked a little dot on each of the 4 corners. Next, I grabbed my Athena drill and I drilled a hole on each of the 4 corners large enough to accommodate the screw on the knob. Now I can simply take that knob, screw it through each of the 4 holes. Once they were in place, I flipped my piece over. Then I took the nut and I threaded it onto each of the 4 screws, which holds these feet in place. I love adding feet to my container. It adds such a nice detail. Plus it adds height, which makes your piece look more substantial. Now it's time to place our canvas panels into our container. I got some hot glue. I ran a line of this hot glue around the opening. I took my Mod Podge panel and pressed it into the hot glue. Then I simply repeated this process on the remaining 3 sides. I added a line of hot glue around the opening. I took my panel and pressed it into the hot glue. I am amazed at how well this hot glue held these panels in place. All these panels were the perfect size. They filled those oval openings perfectly. How cute is this container now? Those panels were the perfect addition for those vacant holes. The feet are a unique detail, and the white color change makes it much lighter and brighter. Now, of course, we've got to add some flowers to our container. So we're going to create a tape grid. I grabbed some Scotch tape and I made several lines vertically and horizontally. I love using tape grids. It holds my flowers in place and I don't have to use floral foam. I love the flowers that we're using for this arrangement. We're going to be using some wisteria. I found some at Michael's and they were 70% off. I think wisteria is so pretty, especially for this time of year. So I grabbed a few stems of those, and I also have some white peonies and roses. I bent the stem on a few of my bunches and I placed them sporadically throughout this container. I chose to keep my flowers in a light and bright color palette that would coordinate with my container. Here is our final container arrangement. Oh my gosh, it looks so gorgeous. It looks expensive, it looks high-end. You guys, we spent $5.99 on this container, and I am just amazed at the transformation. It looks expensive, it looks unique, it's large, so I'm able to fit in a huge arrangement inside of here. We definitely gave this piece a makeover. It looks 100% better than it did when we found it originally at Goodwill. The floral arrangement elevates it even further. These flowers add sophistication and class. Now this piece is upscale and top-notch. I'm actually really excited about this cake stand. I love cake stands, and we are going to turn it into something even more beautiful than it already is. This cake stand was a great size, and it was only $12.99, which is a great price. So we're going to add a beautiful detail along the outside of the top portion of this cake stand. I had my Cricut Maker cut out a design that I chose on some removable vinyl. In order for this design to go all the way around the cloche, I needed 3 separate sections. Now don't worry if you don't have a vinyl cutter. What you can do is use either a stencil or some stickers. So don't feel like you need to have any kind of vinyl cutter to mimic this project. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to weed away the design itself because we're creating a stencil. I got my transfer tape and I put it over the top of my stencil. Then I added 3 sections to the bottom of my cloche. I pressed this vinyl firmly to the cloche because you do not want any air bubbles and you want the edges of the stencil to be sealed to the glass. And because I needed to protect the rest of the cloche, I just got some of that excess transfer tape and put that over the top, which covered the rest of the cloche. We're going to etch our design into the glass with some etching cream. So I got my etching cream and a paintbrush and I added a liberal amount of this etching cream to the vacant areas on my stencil. You're gonna wanna make sure that you add a lot of etching cream. The reason why is because you wanna make sure that that stencil is etched in really well. We worked hard to create such a beautiful design, so we wanna make sure that it's very visible. Once the exposed areas on the stencil had been coated in the etching cream, I let it sit for 10 minutes. And I do wear plastic gloves when I'm working with etching cream to protect my hands. Now here is a tip. I actually save my etching cream when I'm done using it. I just get that paintbrush and I scrape it off and I put it back into the jar. I've had this bottle of etching cream for years because I do this. I just save it and I use it over and over again. Once I had the majority of the etching cream scraped off, I rinsed my cloche off with room temperature water to remove the remaining etching cream. Once the etching cream had been removed, I simply dried it off. Look at how stunning this design is on this cloche. It is so pretty. It's subtle, it's classy and elegant, and it looks so expensive. I actually looked online for etched cake stands similar to this, and they are so expensive, you guys. We only spent $12.99 on ours, and then we created our own design on it. But it looks like we purchased it at a high-end store. Adding this unique detail on this cloche elevated the look. I think it turned out great. I had to think long and hard about what I was going to do with this light fixture, but I came up with two different ideas. So the first thing that we need to do is disassemble this light fixture. I pulled away the insulation and then screwed off the bottom portion of the light. Now I can pull away the glass part from the brass base, and then I simply remove the electrical. Okay, so we've got these two pieces to work with. We're gonna start off by tackling the glass dome portion. I actually really like this. It's got some intricate details on it. I love the way that the glass is shaped with all the cuts and designs in it. We're not going to do much to this dome portion, but we are going to wash it because there are a lot of little dead bugs in this light fixture, and there's some rust around the bottom where everything was attached. So I just rinsed this off in warm soapy water, and it looks brand new, you guys. It's so pretty. So what I'm going to do with this dome portion is I'm going to add a flower arrangement to it. I got some pretty pink peonies and some cream peonies, a few other different bunches of flowers. I bent the stems really tightly because this bowl is small and short. I needed to have an arrangement that would go along with the size of the bowl. This arrangement looks so pretty in this bowl. I love the way it looks right now, but we are going to make this more substantial, and we're going to do that by adding our gorgeous bowl on top of a glass candlestick. This is a glass candlestick that I already have. It fits together perfectly. It looks like these pieces should have always been together. Adding the candlestick base to the bottom of this bowl gives it more stability. It raises up that glass bowl so you can see all of the gorgeous ornate detail on it. Next, we're going to flip the brass base on this light fixture. I had to use all of my creative juices to come up with a solution for this, but I settled on a photo and memo board. So what I did was I headed to Michael's and I found a large piece of styrofoam. This is thick. Our base is pretty deep, so we want to make sure that the foam fills in all of the spaces. I put this brass base over the styrofoam. I got a pencil and traced around it, and then I got a sharp knife and cut out the octagonal shape. Now this one piece was not large enough to create a full octagon, so I used some of the scraps to add that to the top, and I hot glued everything together. So now I have a full octagon. Now I did kind of shave off the edges so there was a slope because our brass base is sloped and we wanted it to fit in nicely. So I trimmed off along the edges so that it slanted in. You could leave your styrofoam plain, but we are going to beautify ours with some scrap fabric. I love this fabric. It's so pretty. It's got some bright, vibrant pops of color on it. I'm going to flip this fabric over, and then I'm going to flip my styrofoam octagon over and place it in the center. Next, I got some hot glue and I added hot glue to the styrofoam. I pulled the fabric tight so the surface would be smooth. I simply continued to hot glue the fabric to each of the corners of my octagon until all the fabric was glued in place. Now I'm going to add some hot glue to the inside of the brass base. So I just ran a line of hot glue along the edge on the inside of the base. And then I took my styrofoam and I pressed that firmly into the base. The hot glue will secure both pieces together. Look at how cute this is, you guys. This is such a fun way to display some fun notes or some photos. It it does have these little holes on the back, so I could actually hang this on the wall. But what I'm going to do is put it on a frame holder. You could place a photo and memo board on top of a dresser or on a counter somewhere. Add some inspirational thoughts or notes to help you kick off your day with positivity. This was such a fun and creative use for this base of a light fixture. You would never know. This memo board started out as a light fixture we got at Goodwill. I think we transformed these two pieces from a light fixture into two very creative uses. So let's head to my favorite thrift store. I always find something unique and special here. The first piece that caught my eye was tucked on a bottom shelf over in the dish department. It was this cutting board. I loved the size and the shape of this cutting board. It had a slate strip down one of the sides, which was pretty cool. I knew that this had a lot of potential, and for $3.99, it was a bargain. So even though the slate strip was a very nice detail, I'm going to remove it. I got a hammer and a screwdriver, and I chiseled that slate piece right off of the cutting board. Just popped right off. Once it was removed, I needed to sand it down. I needed to sand down the glue that was holding the slate in place, but the cutting board also had some cuts and some nicks on it, so I wanted everything to be smooth. I went outside and I sanded this entire piece down. I got all of the glue off. Once it was sanded down, I could see the beautiful wood grain in this cutting board. And I didn't want to restain it a dark color, so we're gonna restain it in a light color. But before we do that, we're gonna add some detail to that little indent part, that indentation where we took out the slate. So I headed over to Hobby Lobby and I found a package of these wooden rectangles. They had a bunch of different sized wood pieces in this package. It was just a few dollars. I'm going to be using just the large rectangles out of this package, and I'm going to put them in this indentation in a herringbone pattern. These wood slices were the perfect size to fit right inside. In order for them to stick really well, I got some liquid nails and I put it on the back of these wood slices and then placed them on my cutting board. I continued to do that throughout the entire indentation to create a beautiful detail. Now, when I got to both the top and the bottom, I couldn't fit an entire wood slice on it, but these are so thin that all I did was get some scissors and trimmed them to the size I needed and then glued them into place. Once everything was glued, I let it dry overnight. I'm going to transform my cutting board into a tray, and I want my tray to have some handles. I had these beautiful handles that were left over from my kitchen remodel, and these are going to be used on my tray. I love the lucite and the gold on these handles. I purchased them from Amazon for just a few dollars a piece. So what I need to do is get my drill and drill some holes into either side of my cutting board, 2 per handle. I also want to put some feet on my tray. I had these leftover cabinet knobs from my kitchen remodel. These were the ones that I'm not using anymore. So I'm going to spray paint them in some Rust-Oleum Gold spray paint. I made sure that the knobs were completely coated in this spray paint, and then I let them dry for a few hours. Now that all my pieces are prepped and ready to go, it's time to restain the cutting board. I am using this antique white stain. I got a sponge brush and I began to paint the stain on the cutting board. I made sure that the cutting board was completely covered in the stain, and then I moved on to the herringbone pattern. I got the stain in all of those little indentations and on the rectangular wood pieces, and then I finished off by staining each of the 4 sides of my cutting board. Next, I took a paper towel and I wiped off the excess stain that was on the cutting board. I really loved the wood grain and I wanted it to be highlighted. By removing the excess stain, I will be able to see the gorgeous detailing of the natural wood underneath. Once I had wiped off all the excess stain, I let this piece dry overnight. Now it's time to add our knobs to the bottom of the cutting board to create our feet. I'm going to be using some E6000. I added the E6000 to the knobs, and then I placed the 4 knobs on the 4 corners of my tray, and then I let them dry overnight. If you have some excess knobs in your house just laying around that you don't use anymore, they are perfect in transforming pieces like trays like this or cutting boards. It didn't cost me any extra money to use these, and I think that they add a tremendous amount of detail to my tray. Okay, so now that we've got the feet on, let's move on to the handles. I took my handles and I put the screws through the holes, and then I screwed the handles to the cutting board. I did this on both sides, and I think that the handles are what elevates this tray so much. I love the sparkly lucite on it and the gold. It makes it look so luxurious and high-end. Okay guys, we are done. Look at how beautiful this tray turned out. And to think it started out as a dark cutting board that we purchased from the thrift store. I love the herringbone pattern on this. It's a beautiful detail. The lighter stain makes this piece so much brighter, and you can see the beautiful wood grain on this tray now. The lucite gold handles and the knobs elevate this and make it look so luxurious. And you can find cutting boards in so many different places. You can of course find them at your thrift store, but you might even have an extra one hiding in your cabinet somewhere that you want to transform into a tray. Okay, so we're gonna show what the tray looked like before. This is our cutting board, and this is what our beautiful tray looks like now. Another very common item that I find at my thrift stores are vases. I found this vase. It is not a looker, you guys. It definitely needs a makeover. I am not in love with the olive tone, and the pattern on it just isn't really my style. But I did love the size and the shape. So we're going to spruce up this vase by changing the color and adding a very unique detail to it. So first we are going to repaint it. And I'm going to be using some white gloss Rust-Oleum spray paint. I took my vase outside and I sprayed it in this white gloss Rust-Oleum spray paint. I sprayed around the entire vase to make sure that all of the lovely olive green was covered up and you could only see white. Once it was completely saturated in the paint, I let it dry for 3 hours. I wanted to create a 3D detail to put on my vase. While I was at Hobby Lobby picking up those rectangular wooden squares, I decided to wander around, as one often might do when they're at Hobby Lobby. And I ended up down the baking aisle and I came across these silicone molds that are used for cakes. I loved the floral detail on it, and I knew that they would be a perfect mold for me to create a 3D detail. I'm going to create my 3D flowers out of some hot glue. So I got my hot glue gun and I added this hot glue right into the molds. I made sure that all the petals and the center of the mold was filled up with hot glue. I created 2 of these flowers. Once I had filled them with the hot glue, I let them solidify, which took about 30 minutes. Now I can just pop them right out. Because they're in these silicone molds, they come out extremely easily. It's amazing what you can create with hot glue. So now that my flowers are made, I need some leaves. So I liked these petals that were on a different flower. So I got my hot glue and I filled these petal molds with the hot glue. Once they were filled up, I let them solidify again for about 30 minutes, and then I just popped them right out of the molds. Because these flowers and petals are made out of hot glue, they're semi-transparent, so you can't really see them very well. So we're going to paint them. I'm going to start off with a neutral backdrop, so we're going to paint them in the same white gloss Rust-Oleum spray paint that we painted our vase in. So I took them outside and I sprayed them in this paint, made sure that they were 100% coated in the paint, and then I let them dry for 2 hours. Now that they're painted, you can actually see more of the detail that are on these flowers. So to enhance that detail just a little bit more, I'm going to add some gold highlights. I have this champagne metallic gold that I purchased at Michael's. I'm going to paint this champagne gold color on the inside of my flowers, right in the center detail, and then I'm going to paint around the edges. Doing this outlines the shape of the flowers. It will also make the flowers pop against the white vase. We don't want it to blend in. We want them to be the highlight of this vase. Once my flowers were painted, I moved on to the leaves, and the leaves I just painted completely in this champagne paint. I just wanted them to be completely gold. Once the flowers and the leaves were painted, I let them dry for a few hours. To attach my flowers and my leaves to my vase, again, I'm just going to be using hot glue. So I added some hot glue to the back of the flowers first. I made sure that it was completely covered in this hot glue, and then I pressed it onto my vase. I held it there for about 10 seconds to make sure that it cooled down and stuck really well to the vase. So once my flowers were in place, I moved on to the leaves. I added the hot glue to the back of the leaves and placed them on my vase. Now my vase is completely done, and I love the way that it looks. It's so unique, it's so special. It looks very expensive, and the detail on it just makes it one of a kind. Now, of course, inside of our vase, we're going to add some flowers. And since it's springtime, I wanted to keep it light and bright. I got these light pastel green leaves and I placed them in the vase. And then I also got some light pink stems and I put them in the vase as well. How pretty is this, you guys? This is such a beautiful vase, especially for this time of year. Spring, summer, these are beautiful, light, bright flowers that are so cheerful. The detail on these flowers, it's just so pretty. It's just so unique. And we did it with hot glue, you guys. How crazy is that? The hot glue could make beautiful flowers like these. We didn't spend hardly any money on the hot glue and just a little bit of paint. And it just makes this piece one of a kind. So here's what our thrifted vase looked like before we transformed it. And here's what it looks like now. Every now and again, I come across these cardboard, almost like paper mache containers at my thrift store. I haven't purchased them because I haven't known what to do, but I saw one at my thrift store and I really loved the detail on it. It had this scoop that went down on each of the 4 sides, and I thought I could do something with this. While I was out shopping at Hobby Lobby, it just so happens that I have a Home Goods across the street. So I thought I'm gonna head on over to Home Goods and see what they have there. In their napkin section, I found this beautiful package of marble napkins. The best part were they were on clearance for $3.50. Before we Mod Podge the napkins onto the container, I'm going to spray paint it white in the white gloss Rust-Oleum spray paint. The reason I'm doing that is so you won't see any of the brown cardboard underneath the thin napkins. Once it was completely covered in this spray paint, I let it dry for 2 hours. So I took my napkin, I unfolded it, and then I put my container over the top of the napkin. I grabbed a pencil and I traced around the container. Then I got a pair of scissors and I cut out the shape. I separate the 2-ply part of the napkin away from the front of the napkin. The reason I do that is because if you put it on your piece and then put the Mod Podge on over the top, a lot of times it will bubble up because there's air that's trapped in between the 2-ply portion. So I always separate mine, so I just have the decorative part that I put on the top of my container or whatever it is that I'm Mod Podging. So I did that, I separated those pieces, and then I got some Mod Podge. I put the Mod Podge over the container, and then I placed my napkin over the top. I got a kitchen scraper tool and I pressed all of the air out of the napkin. Doing this helps the napkin lay flat, and it also removes any air that could be trapped underneath the napkin. I repeated this process on all 4 sides of my container, and then I let it dry for about an hour. Then I came back and I added a top layer of Mod Podge over the surface of the napkin. I did this on all 4 sides once again, and then I let it dry for a few hours. At the top of my container where it scoops down, I had some excess napkin that was above the rim. So what I'm gonna do is get a piece of sandpaper and sand that extra napkin right off. It's the easiest way that I have found to get a clean edge. So if you have some excess paper or scrapbook paper, or in this case napkin, hanging off the edges of your piece, sand it down, it will remove it seamlessly. All right, you guys, now my container is finished. Look at how beautiful this looks. I made sure that the napkin design was the same on all 4 sides so it would be cohesive. It looks so expensive. It looks like marble. You would never know that this was a paper mache box that I covered in a napkin. So now that it's completed, what I'm gonna do is add my flowers in. I have these white and cream flowers, just some beautiful hydrangeas and some peonies, and I added them to my container. We were able to upgrade this cardboard container into something that looks extremely high-end. This is what our container looked like before, and this is what our container looks like now. So let's take a closer look at this lamp. We're gonna start off with the color. This mustard yellow is not doing it any favors. The dark brown on the top and bottom adds a wonky color combination. There are plenty of scuffs and scratches all over this lamp. And I flipped it over, and on the bottom there was some duct tape holding the electrical together. Now, I'm no electrician, but I'm pretty sure that duct tape is frowned upon, so we've got to deal with that as well. All right, we've got a lot of work to do, so let's start off by disassembling this lamp. I turned it on its side, pulled off the duct tape, and there was another weird electrical wire underneath, which I removed, and then I got my needle nose pliers and cut the cord. Then I removed the nut from the bottom and twisted the top off and pulled out the metal center. Now, the shape of this lamp is actually really nice. I love the size, and the curves are very classic and streamlined. It has a lot of potential. So firstly, let's go ahead and get rid of this mustard yellow color. We're going to take this lamp outside and spray it in some Krylon white gloss spray paint. I sprayed a thorough coat on this lamp. I wanted to make sure that the entire surface was completely covered in the white spray paint. We do not want to see any of those sketchy colors coming through. We want a neutral backdrop for our lamp. Once everything was sufficiently coated in the white spray paint, I let it dry for 1 hour. Already, this lamp looks 1,000 times better. It looks so classic and beautiful just by making that quick paint swap. Now, we are going to save one little piece from the original lamp. It's this little cylindrical metal thing. It's brass, but it's discolored, so we're going to paint it in the gold Rust-Oleum spray paint. Once it was completely covered in this gold spray paint, I let it dry for 1 hour. Now, if you haven't guessed already, we are going to be turning this lamp into a ginger jar. I was inspired by all of the gorgeous ginger jars that I saw online. But let me tell you, these ginger jars can get pretty pricey. And we did pay $15 for this lamp at the thrift store, which at the time I thought was pretty pricey. But compared to the ginger jars that we can find online, it's a deal. So that's the plan. We are going to turn the lamp into a ginger jar. Now, it's white, but I really wanted to add some embellishments. And so what I did was I got out my Cricut maker and I cut out some gold cherry blossoms and flowers. Now I'm going to add my gold branches at an angle on my lamp. So I press the vinyl to my lamp with my scraper tool. Because the surface of the lamp is curved, sometimes it's really hard to get the vinyl to lay flat. So what I do is I actually cut the transfer tape. I make little slits along the side, and that way the vinyl will lay flat. And it's just a lot easier to do it this way. Once my vinyl was in place, I removed the transfer tape. I created several cherry blossom branches and flowers. I placed them around the circumference of my lamp. I had a variety of different sizes and shaped branches and flowers. I placed them evenly around the lamp so the entire outside was covered in these gorgeous gold cherry blossom branches and flowers. I love the detail of these gold cherry blossoms and flowers. It has taken it to the realm of high end. Now, of course, we can leave it just like this. It's so beautiful just with the white and the gold, but I want to add some pops of color. So along with the gold cherry blossom branches, I had my Cricut Maker cut out different shades of blue flowers to go over the top of the gold flowers. I simply added the transfer tape to the flowers and then pressed them over the top of the gold flowers. I alternated the darker blue with the lighter cornflower blue so that they were intermixed nicely. This part was pretty time consuming, but trust me, it's so worth it because it looks so good. The minute I added the first one on there, I knew it was going to be a beautiful addition. And I was right, these multicolored flowers are simply stunning. The shades of blue elevated the look of this ginger jar. It looks custom, it looks expensive, and it's personalized to my taste because I happen to love a white, gold, and blue, so it's right up my alley. I took a step back and I thought it needs just a little bit more detail on the neck of the ginger jar and the base. So I simply had my Cricut Maker cut out some gold lines. I added one line of the gold vinyl along the bottom. I pressed it firmly to the base and then pulled it tightly around the circumference of the square base. Then I cut one more gold vinyl line and placed it on the neck of the ginger jar. I simply added it to the center of the neck, pulled it tightly, pressed it firmly to the ginger jar so that it would adhere well. These two lines were such a beautiful addition. It's just what this ginger jar needed. Now, of course, our ginger jar needs a knob at the top. About a month or so ago, I did a high-end dupe video where I recreated this gorgeous box. I used some floral knobs that I purchased at Hobby Lobby for that project. I bought an extra one at that point because I need a backup. Sometimes you just need a little bit of insurance. So we're gonna take that leftover knob and we are going to use it as a knob for our ginger jar. Now this is where that little cylindrical piece is going to come in handy because it's going to add height and a little more detail to the top. I added hot glue to the lamp and then placed the cylindrical piece over the top. Then I added some hot glue to the top of this little cylindrical piece, grabbed my gold floral knob and pressed it to the glue on top of that cylindrical piece. This is such a pretty topper. Instead of using a circle, this flower is so much better. It ties in with all the beautiful flowers that we have around our ginger jar. It ties in the gold, but it also gives our ginger jar a unique flair. And now we are finished with our lamp turned ginger jar. You guys, look at this beautiful ginger jar. This is seriously one of my favorite projects that I have ever done. It looks stunning. It definitely looks like it came from one of those expensive websites that we looked at earlier. I don't think anybody would walk into my house and say, you know what? I think that looks like it's from the thrift store and that it started out as a lamp. There's absolutely no way. This is so professional. The flowers on it, oh my goodness, I love these different shades of blue. They coincide so beautifully with the gold branches, the gold topper, and these little accent lines around the top and the bottom. When I finished this, I took a picture and I sent it to Leslie, and she was so surprised that it ended up to look so good. So I'm happy that she likes it. Now, you don't need to have a vinyl cutter to create a project like this. In fact, I did a little bit of research and I found some stickers on Amazon. You could get the exact same look with stickers. You could use a stencil. If you're really great at painting. You could hand paint some flowers or some branches onto a lamp like this. So if you want to recreate this project, there are definitely ways that you can do it in an affordable way without purchasing a vinyl cutter. I love the way that it turned out. When I was rummaging up and down the aisles, I came across this black tray. I love the detailing around the edge. The size is great. The other thing that's fantastic is the price. It was only $2.99. Now, this tray is plastic, so just keep that in mind as we're going through. It's not a high quality, amazing tray, but it definitely is worth $2.99. Now, I am not going to be keeping this as a tray. We are going to turn it into something completely different. I think you guys will be surprised at the results. So the first thing we need to do is paint this tray. So I took it outside and I sprayed it in the gold Rust-Oleum spray paint. I made sure that all the ornate details along the edge was completely covered in the paint. I also painted the center. Once everything was saturated in the gold paint, I let it dry for 1 hour. I came back, flipped the tray over, and painted the underside. Once again, I made sure that all of the ornate detailing along the edges and the bottom of the tray was completely saturated in the spray paint. And then I let it dry for 1 additional hour. Now that the paint is dry, we're going to add a little style to the center of the tray. And we are going to do it with this gorgeous pink and gold scrapbook paper. I love the gold flowers and the pink is just so bright and cheerful. This paper is going to add elegance to the center of the tray. So we need to measure out the paper so it fits in there nicely. So I placed the paper in the center and then I got a ruler and a pencil and marked out the correct size. I grabbed my scissors and I cut out this rectangle. The edges are curved, so I just cut the edges into the same curved shape. Now this piece fits perfectly inside the center of my tray. Next, I got out some Mod Podge and a sponge brush, and I added a liberal amount of this Mod Podge to the bottom of the tray. I made sure that the surface of the tray was completely coated in the Mod Podge. Then I took my scrapbook paper and I placed it over the top of the Mod Podge. I pressed it firmly to the tray. Then I got out my kitchen scraper and pressed out all the air bubbles that were trapped underneath. Doing this will ensure that that paper lays flat. Next, I added a top layer of Mod Podge. Again, I just painted on a liberal amount of this Mod Podge over the surface of the scrapbook paper. And don't worry if the Mod Podge gets on the sides. A little bit on the sides isn't going to make much of a difference because it dries clear. So feel free to add a decent amount. Once the surface was coated in the Mod Podge, I let it dry for 2 hours. Now we're going to go on a little shopping trip to Hobby Lobby because I need a knob. And Hobby Lobby has a huge variety of knobs. They have an assortment of colors and sizes. I wanted a little bit of sparkle for this project, so I chose a crystal knob with a beautiful gold backplate. This knob is definitely the most expensive part of this project. It came in at a price of $6.99, which is still a great deal. We need to attach our knob to our tray, so we need to drill a hole into the tray. One trick that I love to do is I get a paint can lid and I place it under the item that I'm going to be drilling a hole into. It raises up the piece and makes space for the drill bit to go into. And of course, I'm using my Athena drill, which is the best drill, and I'm going to drill that hole right through the center. Now I can take my crystal knob and poke it through this hole. I screwed on the nut that was on the back, and now my knob is attached to the tray. So you may be wondering, well, what are we going to hang from this crystal knob? Well, we're going to get a Dollar Tree terrarium and fill it up with some beautiful pink and white peonies. I took these stems of flowers and I bent the stem a couple of times because I need to fit them inside of the terrarium. I love the white and pink color combination. It goes with the pink scrapbook paper, and it is also fresh and bright for this time of year. Now that my floral arrangement in my terrarium is done, we are going to hang it from the knob. I have this beautiful light pink satin ribbon. I threaded it through the eye hook that was on the top of the terrarium, then wrapped it around the knob on the tray, and finally tied the ribbon into a beautiful bow. This is absolutely beautiful. You could do so many things in a terrarium like this. Of course, we're going to do flowers. You could do succulents. You could do candles. The possibilities of what you can add in a terrarium and hang it from there are endless. And in fact, if you don't have a terrarium, you could use a mason jar. Just wrap that ribbon around the lid of the mason jar and hang it up on the knob. Now, I couldn't leave well enough alone. I wanted to add one more detail, and because the tray has that beautiful ornate detail all along the edge, all I did was I took some extra white peonies and I poked it through the openings at the top corner of the tray. And then I bent the stems at the back so that the flowers would stay in place. I love the addition of the flowers. It's an unexpected detail and it ties the flowers together. And here is our final flip. Look at how beautiful this is, you guys. You would never know that this started out as a tray. This is so unique and different. I'm going to take this and place it on top of a frame holder, but of course you could hang it on the wall, you could put it on a door. This would be so pretty for a party, a Mother's Day party, a brunch, a baby shower, a wedding shower. It would be a stunning tabletop accessory at any party. I love the crystal knob. That just adds that beautiful little touch of sparkle that this needs. I think that this tray came a long way from where we found it at the thrift store for $2.99. It has a lot of potential, so let's take a closer look at it. Right now it has this green velvet that has been worn. It's faded and it's lifting up on the corner. The inside is pretty filthy, you guys. There's some stains that look pretty questionable. But I love the gold latch and the size of the jewelry box is great. It's got a lot of positives, so let's beautify this jewelry box. The first thing that we're going to do is we are going to remove the top of this jewelry box. It's lifting up anyways, so we're just going to take it off. The lid is made out of cardboard. It's pretty flimsy, so it was really easy to pull off. We need an alternative for the velvet that we just pulled off, so we're going to go on over to Home Goods. One of my favorite places to shop at Home Goods is the gift aisle, the wrapping paper, the gift bags. I find magical things there every single time. And this time was no exception. I found a gift bag. It has pink flowers and shades of green that are perfect because it's going to tie in with the green velvet that's already on the box. The best part is that this bag was only $5.99, plus it came with a gift card and white tissue paper. So that's a bonus. What we're going to do with this bag is we are going to tear it apart. I ripped the bag at the seams and then pulled it apart all the way down the side. Then I pulled out the bottom part and now I can lay this gift bag out flat. Then I took the jewelry box lid and I placed it over the gift bag, and then I got a pencil and traced it out. Next, I got my scissors and I cut out this rectangular shape. Because this gift bag is so beautiful and the inside of our jewelry box is in need of some help, what we're gonna do is cut some more rectangles out and put it in the little slots inside that jewelry box. So I got a ruler and a pencil and I measured out the correct size of rectangles that I needed, and then I cut them all out. Now that my individual rectangles are cut out, I got some hot glue and then I pressed my gift bag rectangles into the hot glue. I repeated this process with all 6 rectangles. The additional detail on the inside of this jewelry box is simply beautiful. And it'll just be our secret that there are some ugly stains that are underneath the paper. Shh, you don't need to tell anybody. It looks so pretty now, no one would ever know. Now I'm going to add the hot glue to the top of the box. I made sure that there was a lot of hot glue, especially on the edges, because we want our paper to lay flat, but also be on there really firmly. So once I had a lot of hot glue on the top of the box, I grabbed my gift bag, a rectangle, and placed that in the hot glue and pressed it together so that it adheres well. One little designer trick that I like to do on a lot of my projects to elevate it is to add feet to the bottom. That little detail takes it just over the top. So we're going to add some feet to our jewelry box. At Hobby Lobby, they had a package of 6 wooden knobs, and it was only $1.49, which is a great deal, and we only need to use 4 of them. So I took 4 of these knobs outside and I sprayed it in the gold Rust-Oleum spray paint. I made sure that each of the knobs was sufficiently covered in the gold spray paint. Once everything had been saturated in the paint, I let it dry for 1 hour. I flipped my box over and I added some hot glue to the corner of the box. Then I placed the wood knob in the hot glue. I repeated this process on all 4 corners of my box. I added hot glue and then placed the knobs in the hot glue in each corner. Isn't this a pretty detail? I love the feet. It's so easy to do and very affordable. It adds a custom detail that makes your pieces look more expensive. The velvet along the top rim was looking a little sketchy to me too. It was discolored and it didn't match. So what we're going to do is we're going to cover it up. But before we do that, we need to remove the latch. And believe it or not, that latch on the inside was coming off anyway, so it was probably a good thing that we took it off. I got my needle nose pliers and I bent the metal and just easily pulled off that top latch. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the same ribbon that we used to hang our terrarium. This beautiful pink satin ribbon. I loved it so much that I wanted to use it on this jewelry box. And it's going to tie the pink from the gift bag flowers into the actual box itself. So what I did was I got some hot glue and I placed it along the rim of the top lid. Then I pressed my ribbon into the hot glue. Adding the ribbon to this part of the box ties in the pink from the flowers on the gift bag. It also hides the discoloration and scuffs that were on the velvet part of this box. Once my ribbon had been sufficiently glued to the box, I grabbed the latch, I bent the metal part back inside so that it could lay flat. Then I got hot glue and added it to the center of the ribbon and then pressed the latch into the glue to secure it back onto the box. And now we are completely done transforming our thrifted jewelry box. You guys, look how pretty this is. And when you open it up, let's open it back up. Look at this. Look at how pretty that is inside. So gorgeous. It ties together. This ties together so nicely with the lid. It's a fun little surprise. When you open it up, you're like, oh, it was meant to go together. So this, you guys, has made such a huge transformation from when we found it. I love the gold latch and the gold feet. That makes it look expensive and high-end. And I love that we left some of the velvet on the bottom. The bottom velvet portion had minimal damage to it, so it was okay to leave it and just keep it as is. Now this jewelry box looks so pretty. It looks so expensive and custom. And for only $3.99, I think that we scored purchasing this. I love the way that this looks. It was a great thrift flip. I love shopping at the thrift store. It's like a treasure hunt. I love rummaging through the shelves, searching for a diamond in the rough that's been overlooked because it has a less than desirable color or you're just at a loss, you don't know how to use it. I found these beautiful ginger jars. One is a mustard yellow and the other is a Dijon mustard color because it has a little more brown in it. The shades of these yellow tones are not the most sought after color scheme. One of them also had a small chip on the bottom and the lid as well. Besides this, the shape of these ginger jars is fabulous and I love the pointed finial on the lid. And the price of these were only $5.99 a piece. And if you've priced out ginger jars, you know that is a great deal. So what we're going to do is paint these ginger jars. We're doing a very small flip, you guys. And this time I'm going to be using a bare spray paint. I didn't even know that they made spray paint, but when I was at Home Depot, I found this gorgeous shade of blue. The name is Adored Blue. I took these jars outside. I flipped the lids onto the side so I could paint the underside of the lid first. Then I moved on to my ginger jars. I made sure that the entire jar was completely covered in this beautiful blue paint. Once the first jar was covered in the paint, I moved on to the second jar. Again, I wanted to make sure that the entire surface of the jar was coated in the spray paint. Once these pieces were saturated, I let them dry for 1 hour. I came back, I flipped the lids over and painted the top side of the lid. Again, I wanted to make sure everything was completely saturated in the spray paint. Once the top of the lids were covered in the paint, I let it dry for an additional hour. Look at how beautiful these ginger jars are now. I love this blue spray paint. Look at how pretty that is. And you guys, that's the extent of our flip for these. All we did was we changed that mustard color to a beautiful blue color. Now, of course, we can leave our ginger jars plain and put them in a variety of different places throughout the house, but I'm going to show you a few different ways that you can style a ginger jar like this. So the first way is we are going to turn this ginger jar into a vase. I got a variety of pink flowers. I love the color combination of pink and blue. Pink and blue work harmoniously together because blue is cool and pink has a warm undertone, which balances each other out. This is so easy to do. Just grab whatever flower you want and put them inside of your container. You don't even need to trim them, just keep them in the bunches that they came in. I'm going to place these floral arrangements on either side of a painting on my fireplace mantle. I love how they balance out the mantelscape. It makes it look symmetrical. I actually placed these floral arrangements on top of some wood rounds. I love using these wood rounds. I purchased them at Hobby Lobby, and all I do is spray paint them gold. It elevates whatever piece you're putting on top, but it also adds an extra detail and brings in another element of color. The ginger jar and the flowers coordinate with the print that I have on my fireplace. It is an elegant way to finish off this mantle display. The next way that we are going to style our ginger jar is with a ribbon. Now, I just got a ribbon that had a gold dash along the side. I wrapped it around the neck of the ginger jar and tied it into a bow. The contrast between the white and the blue looks so pretty. Tying a bow around your ginger jar is an easy way to introduce another color scheme or color combination to your decor. The ribbon is also a simple way to tie in your holiday color scheme or specific color for a party. Now I'm going to take this a step further and I'm going to embellish this bow with some bejeweled shoe clips. I got a package of these pretty shoe clips. They have pearls and gems on them. They are from Amazon. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this crystal one, and it just has a clamp on the back. You just open it up just like this, and then I placed it over the center of my bow and then clamped it shut. Once I added a clip to my first bow, I did the same thing with my second bow. Now look at how pretty this ginger jar is now. With a simple bow and a sparkly clip, we definitely elevated the look of this beautiful jar. And if you don't have shoe clips like this, you can definitely substitute it for a brooch, or even if you had a large sparkly button, you could glue that on or sew it on, and that would be a great alternative. I placed each one of my ginger jars on my nightstand on either side of my bed. It is such a beautiful addition to my nightstand displays. It brings in a pop of color, and the sparkly gems that are on the bow is a fun detail that elevates the look of my jars. One of my favorite places to search at my thrift store is in the dish aisle. I always find something fabulous over there. I found these pretty glass candlesticks. They're small, and there was a set of 2, which was fantastic. To me, they look like a blossoming flower. I loved these scalloped edges. And the best part is these were only 99 cents a piece, which is a great deal. Now we are going to style these candlesticks in a variety of different ways. We're going to start with the most obvious, and that's to leave it plain. So what I did was I just grabbed some tall candles and I placed it inside of the candlesticks. My candlesticks are tapered inside, so it will hold my candlestick upright and keep it in place. Whoops, okay. Take two. Now my candlesticks go in and they're tapered inside, so they will hold my candlestick upright and keep it in place. But there is a gap around it, and sometimes you'll have a candlestick that is too large for your candle. So what you can do as an alternative to make sure that it stands upright is you can actually use some decorative fillers. You can use those beaded gems. You could actually use salt. That would work fantastic. Just add a little bit of salt in your candlestick and that should fill in that gap. So don't be concerned if your candle and your candlestick don't match up. All right, so the next way that we are going to style our candlestick is with a flower. We're going to turn our candle into a vase. So what I did was I took some artificial flowers, I removed them from the stems, so I just had the flower, and I placed it into the top of each of the candle holders. You could get a whole lot of candle holders, fill them with flowers, add one of these to each place setting, or you could run them down the center of a dining table, or intermix them between your decor. Next, we are going to make our candles more substantial. I have these pretty dessert cups, and my candlesticks will fit right inside of these glass dessert cups perfectly. The cups will help give these candlesticks more stability. The base is much thicker. If you have small candlesticks like these and you want them to be more substantial, little dessert cups like these would work. You could put them inside of a mug. You could even put them inside of a vase, and that would completely transform the look of the candlestick. Next, we are going to take both of our candlesticks and turn it into one larger candlestick. So what I did was I took my first candlestick, I flipped it over, and I added hot glue to the top. Then I grabbed my second candlestick and placed it over the top of the first one. I pressed them together so that they would adhere well. Don't be concerned about the hot glue on the glass. I'm going to show you how you can pull these two pieces apart and remove the hot glue. It just peels right off, so you can feel okay knowing that these two candlesticks glued together to create a larger candlestick can be reverted back into the two singular candlesticks. Small candlesticks like these are so versatile. I've just shown you a few ways that you can use it, but there are so many other ways that you can do it. I find them all the time at my thrift store, and you can't beat the price of 99 cents. If you like design tips and DIY home decor, then you have come to the right place. I post weekly videos on all things relating to the home. So make sure that you are subscribed so I can share these creative videos with you. Okay, so our next thrifted piece is this very unique wood wall art. I love the 3D design on this wall art. The raised wood panels look like flowers to me, and it's unlike anything that I've seen. And it came at a good price. It was only $7.99. The only problem that I have with this piece is that it looks pretty dirty. I'm guessing it may have been in a kitchen because it's got some splatters on it. That is no problem though. We are going to clean it up. So what I did was I got some Gooby Gone and I sprayed it all over the surface of my wood wall art, and I wiped it off with a paper towel. Once everything was good and clean, I grabbed some furniture polish and I sprayed that over the top of the wall art, and then I wiped it off with a cloth. This wood wall art just needed to be polished up to bring it back to its original glory. Now we are going to style this wall art in the most obvious way first. We are going to hang it on the wall. It has some hooks on the back, so it was easy to hang on the wall. Thin rectangular wall art or paintings like this fit into awkward spaces like right above a toilet. We're going to get creative with the next way that we are going to style our wood wall art. We are going to actually create a centerpiece here in the kitchen. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with this gorgeous vinyl runner. I love using the vinyl in the kitchen because it's so easy to wipe off. You don't need to worry about spills. Next, I'm going to grab this riser. This is from Target. It has a beautiful marble top and gold legs, so that's going to go right in the center of my runner. Next, we are going to take our beautiful wood wall art and we are going to turn this into a tray. So I'm going to place it right over the top of my marble riser. Now we've got a gap between the bottom of the wall art and the top of the countertop. So we are going to use this ficus garland and we are going to add it right around the riser so it covers up that space. It just fills in that space, and this is where you can get really creative. You can go in so many directions for different seasons. You could use pine branches and pine cones for the Christmas time, some fall leaves in autumn, some spring flowers. You could just, the possibilities are endless. So now that this is in place, we are going to add some items to the top. But because one of the items we are going to add is a thrifted item, let's talk about that first. I found these beautiful set of 4 milk glass goblets with a gorgeous raised grapevine detail. These are so pretty and the size is fantastic. I love the shape. And of course, you cannot beat the price of $2.99 a piece. So I scooped up this set of 4. Now the first way that we are going to use these goblets is as a vase. I have 4 beautiful peach and orange floral stems that we are going to add to each of our glasses. What I did was I took the floral stem and I bent it so that the stem is the correct height. So when I put the flower in the glass, it's level to the top of the glass. I added an identical rose to each one of my glasses, and now I have a beautiful way to display flowers. I'm going to spread these flowers out on my riser. These alone would be a fantastic centerpiece. Again, you could add them to a dining table. If you had multiple glasses, you could put one in each one of your place settings. These would be great fillers to add to a shelf. You could put them on a coffee table, a nightstand, and of course they are a great way to theme your florals seasonally by simply swapping out the style of the flower and the color. Next up, we are going to add some candles to our cups. We are going to make these candles float. What I'm going to do is add some water to each of these glasses. I filled the water almost all the way to the top. I did this on each of the cups and try not to spill like I did. I made a mess. That's okay, it's water, so it's no big deal. These candles will float, so I added all 4 tea lights to the 4 glasses, and then I simply just lit the wick. This is a gorgeous way to bring a fire element to your dining table in a very subtle way. Again, you could add each of these cups to a place setting or down the center of a dining table, just like the flowers. This is also a safer way to have a candle burning because if anything happens, if it gets spilled, it's gonna go out because the water will put it out. So these are just a couple of different ways that you can style these glasses. Now that you guys have seen our thrifted glasses, we can finish off decorating our centerpiece. Next, we are going to take this beautiful brass tray. I love this tray, it's so pretty. It's got some leaf detail on it and it's the perfect size. So I'm gonna put it right here on this side. Next, I'm going to add my 4 milk glass cups, goblets, whatever you wanna call them. They're gonna go right here in the front. And in the back, I have this tall glass pitcher. Again, you guys, this was thrifted. I probably got it last year, and I just filled it up with some ice water. On the opposite side, I have a pretty glass tray that I added some grapes to the top. And then down in the front, I'm going to place these beautiful plates. These were thrifted, you guys. These are so pretty. They're white and they have a gold detail along the rim and on the inside. They were only 99 cents a piece. I picked up 8 of them and they are the perfect appetizer plate. I've got some monogrammed bee napkins, and you've got to have a little bit of chocolate, right? So I'm going to place the napkins and the chocolate right next to the plates. And then in the back, we're going to put our candlesticks, our thrifted candlesticks. These are a perfect addition right back here. I love adding candles to my displays because it adds that warm ambiance that any display needs. So here we are, we've got our gorgeous centerpiece here on this kitchen island. And you would never know that what's holding everything up is a piece of wall art. I have so many thrifted items on this display, which keeps the costs down. I love the contrast between the warm wood and the gorgeous garland. We've got the pretty milk glasses. We've got the pop of green from the grapes. You could have a few friends over and set up an easy display like this. By thinking outside of the box, we were able to turn this wood wall art into a beautiful tray for a gorgeous centerpiece. Our next thrifted item is a glass jar. I love using glass jars because they are so versatile. They can go in so many different directions. I loved this glass jar because of its size and its shape. The knob on the top was so cute, and I love the cylindrical look of this jar. And of course, you've got to love the price of $2.99. That is a great deal. We are going to be doing another mini flip on this jar. This time, instead of spray paint, we're going to be using some washi tape. I purchased this package of washi tape at Target. We are going to be using the thicker champagne gold colored washi tape. And what I'm going to do is remove the lid from our container, and then I'm going to grab my washi tape. I'm going to place it on the rim of the glass lid. I'm going to press the tape and the lid together and then pull the washi tape tightly, and then continue to press it to the glass around the entire circumference of the lid. Once I was finished adding the washi tape to the lid, I took the container itself. I added the washi tape to the bottom of the container and did the same thing as I did on the lid. I simply pressed the washi tape to the glass, pulled it tightly, and then wrapped the washi tape around the perimeter of the container and then snipped off the ends. And then I pressed everything firmly to the glass. Look at how beautiful and unique this container looks. And washi tape comes in a variety of different colors and sizes, so you could get whatever color tape that fit with your design style. And the washi tape is semi-permanent, so you can peel it off and return this glass jar back to its original state. We are going to be putting some items inside this jar that you can display in your bathroom. The first item I'm going to add is some beauty blenders. I have these pretty beauty blenders in a variety of shades of pink. This is a great way to display bathroom items, but also to store them. If you had bath bombs, you could put them in here, or fill this up with some cotton balls or pretty soaps. You could also put in some bath salts or some Epsom salt. I have this large bag of Epsom salt, and I'm simply going to pour it into my container. You could place this beautifully filled jar next to your tub. I actually love the way that the solid white Epsom salt looks against the gold washi tape. It looks like sparkly snow. And then the final thing that we are going to add to our jar is some tissues. I got a box of tissues. I pulled it out of the box and just placed it inside of the glass container. Now you are going to want to make sure that the top tissue is coming out just like this. That way you can continue to pull it out individually. But how fun is this? This is such a fun way to display some tissues, and you just pop the lid right back on. You can display this on your countertop next to a sink in the bathroom or any place that you need tissues. These are some cute, fun ways to use a jar to display some items for your bathroom. But you guys, I think the biggest takeaway today is to Find some affordable items and reimagine them. Just use your creativity and you will be able to get some unique, one-of-a-kind items that are affordable. We're gonna look at this glass jar. Look at how cute this little sand and seashell glass container is. The size is great, it's a fabulous shape, and it's in great condition. Do I love the sand and the seashell fillers in this container? Nah, not so much, but that's an easy fix. I also have a whole lot of glass apothecary jars, so we are going to transform this container into something that will be unrecognizable. Now, the price on this container was only $6.99. That's a steal. The first thing I'm going to do is empty out all of the sand and the seashells. So I got a plastic bag and I just dumped everything out. Do you know what we haven't done in a very long time? Hydro dip. It's one of my favorite painting techniques, so we are going to do that on our glass jar. But firstly, we need to make sure that we have a solid base coat of paint. So what I'm going to do is get some bare white paint. This is a satin finish. I'm going to spray my jar in the white paint. I made sure the entire surface of the glass jar was covered in the paint. Once it was, I moved on to the lid and I sprayed the bottom of the lid first. Once everything was sufficiently coated in the paint, I let it dry for 1 hour. I flipped the lid over and painted the top side. Once it was completely covered in the white paint, I let it dry for an additional hour. Now that our white base coat is dry, let's hydro dip. So this is how the hydro dipping process works. What you're gonna do is get a container. I have a bucket and I lined it with a garbage sack. This is gonna help for cleanup purposes after. I'll show you how we get the paint out of the water. So once you've got your container lined with a garbage sack, a plastic bag, whatever, we're gonna fill it up to about the top with water. First of all, I've got my lovely assistant, my son Blake, who's helping me. This really is a two-person job. So what we have are 3 different shades of paint. I've got a white, a gold, and a gray because we're trying to get a marbled effect. I want it to be a light marbled effect, so we're gonna go with mainly white and then a couple little splurts of the gold and the gray. So this is how it's gonna go. We're gonna take the lids off, and I have gloves on because I'm going to be handling the vase that's gonna go inside of the water. We're gonna start with white, and I'm gonna spray it for about 3 seconds into the water. We're just alternating the colors. We're gonna do this about 6, 7 times. We have our bullseye effect right now. So I'm gonna get my vase. We've already painted it white, and I'm just gonna dip it into the paint. And the paint just clings to whatever it is that you put inside. So look at that, you guys. Look how pretty that is. Now, because we only have it done on one side, we're gonna do this process again until we get the desired look that we want. Look how pretty that's looking. Okay, we've got one more side. Okay, here we go. Done with this part. Now we're gonna move on to the lid. All right, let's do the lid. Same process, here we go. Okay, we've got our bullseye. Let's grab the lid, pop it in. Here it is. All right, we're finished with this part. So we're gonna let this dry for about 2 hours. And if there are any like water droplets trapped underneath the paint, you could just get a paper towel and dab that water right off. To clean the paint out of your bucket, what you're gonna do is take your gloved up hand and just swirl it around, and the paint will cling to the plastic bag and leave your water nice and clear. That way you can dispose of it. I usually just dump mine out in the grass because now the paint is on the side. You can see that the water is fairly clear because all the paint is now on the side of the bag. The paint does take a couple hours to dry. One, because it's layered in a couple of different areas, but the second is because we dipped it in water, so it's gonna take a little bit longer to dry. Now that it's dry though, we are going to embellish the lid. Now the lid has a hole in the top. I'm guessing maybe it was for a decorative finial originally that was on there, I'm not sure. But it's very advantageous for us because now we can add whatever topper we want. And the topper that I chose was a marble knob that I purchased at Hobby Lobby. Now, this marble knob is left over from this project. Now, this was a project I did a couple months back, and you can see that I have 3 of these marble knobs. I had one left over, so it's perfect. We are going to use it in this project. And the marble knob will coordinate with the marble paint design that we have on our jar. So what I'm gonna do is get some E6000 and add the E6000 to the top of the lid. I am running low on E6000, so I had to squeeze every little drop out of that tube, but I had just enough. I grabbed my knob and I pressed it into the glue, and then I let this dry overnight. Our gold topper has a gold ring around it, and I want to tie that gold into the jar. And I'm going to do that with some washi tape. I have this gold champagne washi tape. I've used it before. It comes in a multi-pack that I purchased at Target. I simply pressed the tape to the jar, pulled it tightly, and adhered the tape around the entire circumference of the bottom portion of the jar. Adding this washi tape ties the gold together, and it adds a little more embellishment to our piece. Washi tape is one of those design cheat codes. If you have a hard time drawing lines or painting on lines straight like I do, the washi tape will do it for you. And it's semi-permanent, so if you don't like it later on, you can easily remove it. We are finished with our beautiful jar makeover. Look at how pretty this is, you guys. It is so elegant, unique, one of a kind. I can't believe how similar this looks to real marble. All of the veining looks natural, even on the lid. And this marbleized design coordinates beautifully with our marble topper. We've got the gold on the topper, the gold veining in our marbleized design, and then we've got the gold line of washi tape along the bottom that ties everything together. It looks classic, but yet it still has a one-of-a-kind personality. We transformed this glass jar from ahoy into amazing. All right, our next thrift flip is a piece that I know that most of you already have at home. If you have any kind of puzzles or chess pieces or checkers, you're gonna have one of these wooden boxes. I found this wooden box filled with puzzle pieces. It is a great size, and I love the fact that that lid just slides on and off. And of course, the price is great at only $2.99. So if you don't already have one of these wooden boxes at home in your game closet, go look at your thrift store. I'm sure that they will have some there for you. All right, so we are going to embellish our box. So first up, let's go ahead and get rid of those puzzle pieces. Just like our jar, we want to have a base coat. So I took it outside and I sprayed it in that same bare white satin spray paint. I made sure that the lid was covered in the spray paint and then moved on to the box. I painted the sides thoroughly in the paint and then painted the divided sections inside. Once everything was coated in the paint, I let it dry for an hour, then came back and flipped the lid and the box over and sprayed the underside of these pieces. Once again, I made sure that they were sufficiently covered in the white spray paint, and then I let them dry for an additional hour. While we're waiting for that to dry, I'm going to pull out a book of scrapbook paper. I purchased this at Michael's and thumbed through, and I found this gorgeous pink and gold floral scrapbook paper. I love the shade of pink. It has a very feminine touch to it. So what we're going to do is cut out these flowers that are on the scrapbook paper. Now this is going to be time consuming, so just grab yourself a chair and cut out your flowers. The reason why I'm cutting out the flowers and leaves individually is because I want to place them strategically on the lid. In order for me to sufficiently cover the lid the way that I want to do it, I need to cut out a whole bunch of flowers, which is exactly what I did. Now the paint on the lid is dry and my flowers are cut out. Let's go ahead and adhere the scrapbook flowers to the box. Now I'm going to be using some Mod Podge and a sponge brush. I brushed on a liberal amount of Mod Podge to the surface of the lid. Then I took my scrapbook flowers and placed them in the Mod Podge. I got a scraper tool and pressed the paper firmly to the lid. The scraper tool not only will help the paper adhere well to the lid, but it gets out any air bubbles that may have been trapped underneath the paper. Once I had all of my scrapbook florals in place, I let it dry for about 10 minutes. Then I added a top layer of Mod Podge. Again, I'm using a decent amount of Mod Podge. I want to make sure that the surface of the lid and the flowers are well coated in the Mod Podge. Once everything was sufficiently covered, I let it dry for 2 hours. I'm going to add handles to each end of this box. Now, a couple weeks ago, I did a small bathroom remodel and my vanity had these handles that didn't coordinate with the look that I was going for, so I added some new handles. I'm going to take these leftover handles that I am not using anymore, and that's what we are going to use for this box. So I took these pulls outside and I sprayed them in a champagne spray paint. This is such a gorgeous color. It's very muted. Once it was sufficiently covered in the spray paint, I let it dry for an hour. Now we need to attach these pulls to our box. So I'm going to get out my favorite drill. It's my Athena drill, and I'm going to drill some holes into the box. I had marked exactly where I needed to drill, and then I drilled 4 holes, 2 on each end of the box. Now that my pulls are dry, we can attach those to the box. I took those screws and I pressed them through the hole. I got my drill back out and I screwed the handles in place. I repeated this process on the other side to attach the second handle. Our box is looking amazing, but there's still a few embellishments I want to add. Of course, we've got to add some feet to our box. I was at Michael's and I found this package of half circles. Look how cool those are. These are going to be perfect as feet for our box. So I grabbed 4 of these half circles. I took them outside and I sprayed them in the same spray paint that I used on my handles, this champagne gold spray paint. I made sure that these half circles were sufficiently covered in the paint, and then I let them dry for 1 hour. I flipped my box over. I got some hot glue. I added hot glue to each of the half circles and then pressed them into the 4 corners. The hot glue is going to work perfectly for this project. It's strong enough to hold these feet in place. One last embellishment that we are going to add to our box is a gold stripe. I was just inspired by the jar that we did earlier. I loved the gold stripe that was on there. So we're going to add a gold stripe as an extra embellishment to the box. So I took this same champagne gold washi tape, I pressed the tape to the box and wrapped it around the perimeter. Adding this champagne gold stripe finishes off the box. It also ties in the champagne gold feet and the handles together. We are finished with our puzzle piece decorative box. Look at how beautiful this ended up. Look at the scrapbook flowers on there. They are gorgeous. This would be such a great addition to a bathroom. You could put in some makeup brushes, makeup itself, or even jewelry inside a box like this. You could also use it for your office supplies, your crafting supplies. You could put in paintbrushes. There's a myriad of things that you could do with a box like this. And you would never guess that this started out as a puzzle piece box that I got in the game section at the thrift store and transformed it into this beautiful decorative piece. Our next thrifted item was found in the dish section of the thrift store. This to me looks like a glorified fruit basket. You know those little plastic baskets that you buy when you get strawberries? Well, that's what this container looks like to me. This is, however, ceramic and it's very sturdy. I don't necessarily love this shade of green. It's not my favorite. But what is my favorite is the price. It was only $2.99, which is a great deal. We are going to start off by changing that green color. It's just not floating my boat. So we're gonna make that quick swap. Now I'm going to be using this Adored Blue Bear Spray Paint. There are two reasons why we're gonna use this paint. The first one is I absolutely love this color. It is gorgeous. I used it on some ginger jars that I purchased at the thrift store a month or so ago in that project. They were mismatched and I sprayed them in the spray paint and just fell in love with this color. The second reason is because I already have it. And because we're trying to stay on a budget, it's great to repurpose and reuse items that you already have. So what I'm going to do is take this container outside and spray it in the spray paint. I flipped it over and painted the underside first. I made sure the sides and the bottom were completely covered in the paint. Once it had been coated in the paint, I let it dry for an hour, then came back, flipped it over and sprayed the inside and one more time around the outside as well. Then I let this container dry for an additional hour. The paint already makes it look so much better. Now, one detail about our container is that it has these little slots and gaps all around the circumference of this container. We are going to take advantage of those slits and we are going to embellish our container with a gorgeous dusty rose satin ribbon. So what I'm going to do with this ribbon is I'm just going to weave it in and out of the slots on the container. I simply threaded the ribbon in and out of these slits. I went around the entire container, weaving the ribbon in between the open spaces. Once I got back to the starting point, I tied the ribbon into a knot and cut off the excess ribbon. Using ribbon is a great way to customize pieces like this. You can swap out that ribbon for the different seasons or holidays or party or room color scheme by simply switching out the ribbon, and ribbon is very affordable. So now we have our adorable container that has this ribbon around it. I love the way that these pastel colors coordinate with each other. The dusty rose and this pale blue, they are just a great combination. Now we are not going to leave our container like this. Of course, we've got to add a flower arrangement. I love flowers. So we're going to do a little mini flower arrangement in here. We're going to start off by creating our tape grid. So I grabbed some Scotch tape and I ran 2 lines of tape vertically and 2 lines of tape horizontally. The flowers that I'm using are pale pink flowers that coordinate with the ribbon. They just are so pretty and they're small flowers. So I took these bunches and I bent the stem and I simply just nestled them right inside of that tape grid. The tape will keep those flowers upright and hold them in place without having to use floral foam. How pretty is this floral arrangement in our new container with our satin ribbon and the coordinating flowers? It looks so pretty. This arrangement is a classic, beautiful arrangement that is soft but very elegant. I love the way our thrifted container looks now. It came a long way from when I found it in a interesting shade of green at the thrift store. My favorite place to look and rummage through at my thrift store is the dish section, and I particularly love looking through the silver. I found this trivet and it did not look like much. It was just a mess. It had tarnish all over it, so much so that in some areas it was completely black. But I saw the potential that it had. I loved the ornate detailing along the edges. The size was great, and it was only $3.99. Keep that price in mind as we move along and remove all of the tarnish. Now, what I use to help me to remove my tarnish is this Wright's Silver Cream. This stuff works like magic. I took the sponge and then I put some cream on it, then began to wipe it all over the trivet. I really had to put in the elbow grease into removing this tarnish. It was on there pretty good, but I could see glimpses of the beautiful silver underneath, which kept me motivated to continue to scrub off all of the tarnish. Once I had finished removing the tarnish from the top, I flipped it over. I grabbed a whole bunch more of the Wright's Silver Cream and I began to rub it over the bottom. The underside was super dirty. You could tell it had not been cleaned in years, and that is probably why I got it for $3.99. So now it's time to rinse off all of the cream. I used lukewarm water and rinsed off all of the cream. Then I dried it off. Look at how beautiful this trivet looks now. It looks brand new. That's one thing I love about silver. If you have silver pieces, they really are a great investment because they will last over a long period of time. It's just, you gotta do the upkeep to keep it looking brand new. But in my case, it worked out because as I was examining this beautiful trivet, I flipped it over and there is some engraving right here on the back. There's a monogram W, it says Wallace, and the number 7310. So being the curious person that I am, I thought I'm gonna Google this and I'm gonna see if I can find out more about this trivet. I found more than one of these identical trivets for sale for $150. I found one on Etsy that was $150. I found one on Cherish that was $150. Now remember, we purchased this for $3.99. This vintage trivet could be sold for $150. That is a 3,600% return on my initial investment. Now, as much as I would love to sell it, I'm not going to. I'm going to keep it. I love this piece. And the reason why I purchased this trivet in the first place was I wanted to use it to put underneath my candles. You don't have to just use trivets for your hot pots or pans. You can use them as decor. So I placed a candle right over the top, and I love the way that the silver reflects the light from the candle, and it adds an elegant touch to our candle. This is another reason why I love shopping at my thrift store, because you just never know what kind of treasure you're going to find. We are going to start off creating a beautiful centerpiece for this kitchen island. We're going to start off with a large marble Lazy Susan. I love using marble at the base of my centerpieces because it is classy. It elevates your centerpiece and makes it look expensive. Plus, it raises it up a bit, so it gives it that extra height. This Lazy Susan is from Home Goods. I love the detail around the edges. It's just so pretty. Right here in the front, I'm going to add a plate. This is a thrifted plate, and I love the gold scalloped edges that it has. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a glass candy jar. I'm gonna remove the lid so I just have the glass base. And I'm gonna put that right in the center of my plate. And then inside of the base of the candy jar, I'm going to put a candle in there. This just adds a beautiful extra touch. It makes it look a little fancier. I love how we've got the white and gold plate, the glass candy jar base, and then our candle. Layering is such a great way to get an expensive look so easily. Now to the side, we are going to get a ginger jar and remove the lid. And then I grabbed a whole bunch of spring stems. I've got some white Chinese lanterns, some pale pink flowers, and a soft sage leaf. And I just put them in here, you guys. It was so easy, just poked them right in. And I love the height of these flowers and leaves. We are going to go grand on this centerpiece, and one way to do it is by adding height. I added some ribbon that I purchased at Walmart. to the neck of some ginger jars last week and displayed them on my entertainment center. Well, this week we are going to take this same ribbon and we're going to wrap it around the top of the ginger jar. This ties those two spaces together, and it also introduces this color scheme into the kitchen area. It's such an easy thing to do. It's a great way to theme your seasonal colors. So I'm just going to add this beautiful ginger jar to this side of my marble Lazy Susan, and then over here I just have a large white urn. I purchased this at Home Goods. It's a classy piece, it's a neutral piece, and it goes along with every season and holiday. So I'm just going to add that right to the side of our ginger jar. And now we're all finished with our spring centerpiece display. This centerpiece brings in our color scheme. It adds that freshness because of the flowers. It's seasonal because, again, of the flowers and the color scheme. It's got height to it. It's got dimension. It has marble and glass and ceramic, and by combining all of those materials, it gives your centerpiece a lot of interest. Not only is this centerpiece beautiful in my kitchen, but you could create something similar and put it on your tabletop, your foyer table, your coffee table. It was so easy, anyone could do it. Now that our centerpiece is done, let's move back to the backsplash and create some more spring touches over there. I'm going to create some smaller centerpieces and place them on either side of my cooktop. We again are going to start off with a marble slab. This is a cutting board. I purchased this at Ross. It's a great base for what we're putting on top. Next, we are going to get another thrifted plate. This was only 99 cents at my thrift store, and it has the same color scheme as the plate that we have on our centerpiece. It's white with a scalloped edge that's gold. This is going to go on top of my marble piece, and then we are going to add a beautiful floral arrangement to the top of the plate. I'm using the same flowers that I used on my centerpiece. I've got the white flowers, the pale pink flowers, the white Chinese lanterns, and then I also added in some lamb's ear because I think lamb's ear is such a beautiful leaf for this time of year. It's that soft sage green, and to me it just feels springy. So I'm going to add this flower arrangement to the top of the plate. I created an exact replica of this small size centerpiece right here on this side of the cooktop. I use the same flowers and marble and plate. I love how it brings balance and symmetry to this space, and by using those same flowers, it ties in the centerpiece that's on the center island. I'm going to start off with 8 5x7 canvases. I purchased these small canvases at Ross. They came in a package of 8, and they were only $3.99. They were on clearance. I love a good bargain. Now, if you've been with me for a while, you know that I love to hydro dip. Just a couple of weeks ago, we hydro dipped this urn right here. And so I thought, let's see if we can hydro dip some art. So that is exactly what we're gonna do with our canvases. So I got a small garbage can and I lined it with a garbage sack, and then I filled it to the top with some water. Then I took 3 spray paints. I'm using a gold, a silver, and a black spray paint. I'm going for a marbleized design, and so these colors are gonna give me that look. So I took my spray paint and I began to spray it into the water. I did silver and gold, and the silver and the gold, and then a little bit of black in the water. I did more silver and gold than I did black because black is very overpowering, so I didn't want to use very much of that. Once I had the bullseye formed in the water, I took my canvases and I dipped them into the paint. You can dip 2 to 3 of these canvases into the paint that you sprayed in one setting before you need to respray your paint, which is what I did after I had dipped a couple of canvases in. I resprayed the paint into the water. I did the exact same process, just alternating the colors until I got the desired marble look that I wanted, and then I took my canvases and I dipped them into the water. I use plastic gloves because I don't want the paint to get on my hands while I'm dipping the canvases. Once I had had dipped all of my canvases in the paint, I let them dry for 2 to 3 hours. The previous time when I hydro dipped my urn, I had a lot of inquiries as to what I did with the water after I was done hydro dipping. Well, let me show you what I do. Is you can look close, you can see that the paint will adhere to the garbage sack. That's why I use a garbage sack. If you don't use a garbage sack, it will stick to the side of whatever container you decide to use. The water, as you can see, is clear because the paint will gravitate and stick to whatever is closest to it. And now I can just take my bucket of water and dump it out in the grass. As you can see, after I've dumped my water, the paint is still on that plastic bag, so I didn't get any of the paint in the grass. Now I can remove the garbage sack and throw it away. Super simple, zero mess. Okay, so now that our canvases are dry, we are going to frame them. We're going to use some frames that I purchased at my thrift store. Surprise, surprise. I love my thrift store. These frames are so pretty. I love the gold detail on them. The art inside of these frames is not my style. Don't get me wrong, I like an astrological chart as much as the next person, but I don't want to display it in my house. So I'm going to remove this art and we are going to put in our canvases. And the best part is that these were only $5.99 a piece. I need to create a backing that's going to go behind our canvases. And what I'm going to use is a gift bag. I purchased this gift bag at Ross a while ago. This is going to be perfect behind our art. It's the right color, it's gold, and it's black. It's going to make our art pop. You can use unique items like this to use as backing. I've done wrapping paper in the past. You can use contact paper, you can use scrapbook paper, all kinds of things to give your art just a little extra pop. I simply took the bag apart, I separated the edges from each other, and then I laid it flat. Next, I took the back of the frame and traced around it so I had the perfect size template, and then I cut it out with scissors. I hot glued the gift bag rectangle directly onto the back of the frame. I hot glued around the edges. The reason why I am doing this is because sometimes you can hot glue things and put paper over the top and it gets wavy. I don't want it to be wavy in the middle. The edges are going to be covered up with our mat. I'm going to do the same thing with the mat. I'm going to hot glue that directly over the top of our black gift bag. And now it's time to add our marbleized canvases. I got a ruler and I put it at the top so I could make sure that all of my mini canvases were equidistant from each other, and then I simply hot glued them into place. I'm doing 4 small canvases per frame. I want this to be more of a collection instead of individual pieces. And then I simply repeated this process with my other frame. I did the exact same thing, and now I have my art that is ready to be put back into our frames. Now these frames are so sturdy, I actually had to screw them back together, so I know they're not going to come apart. And now everything is complete. We have our wall art. I cannot even tell you how beautiful this is. This looks like you could buy it at a store for $50, $60, $70, $100, but we made this so affordably. We got some thrifted frames, we used some canvases that were on clearance, and a little bit of spray paint. And each piece is so unique and individual, but as a whole, this collection looks very cohesive. This was so simple, anybody could do this, and you could definitely customize this to fit into your own design, color scheme, or style. You could pick whichever spray paints you wanted to use and customize it to make it into an art piece that you will treasure. Now, I love this time of year, and there is nothing cozier than curling up by the fireplace. Here's what the fireplace mantle looked like for summer. It was pretty streamlined. I had a few ginger jars and a beautiful summer print that was in the middle. So what we're gonna do is clear all that away, and we are gonna start with a fresh blank slate. Adding fall foliage to your fireplace mantle is a great way to evoke that autumn feeling. You can, of course, use a garland, but I'm going to be using some fall stems. So I headed on over to Hobby Lobby, All of their fall items were 40% off. I found these gorgeous cream fall stems. The leaves are going to be perfect in our fireplace design because they are neutral. To pair with these cream stems, I got some champagne gold sparkly leaves. Now these were in the Christmas section. Don't skip the Christmas section, especially when everything's 50% off, because you can find some fantastic neutral pieces there. So I picked up several of these for a couple of dollars a piece. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to add my stems to my fireplace without having them fall off. Now I have a little screw at the back that I put there a couple of years ago to hang up my Christmas garlands because they are always so big and full and lush. I did not want it to fall down, so I do have a screw on either side that I can use. And then I'm also going to get some fishing line. Fishing line is great because it can handle a lot of weight and it is semi-transparent. It's really hard to see, so you don't know how everything is attached. So what I did was I took my stems of leaves, I wrapped the fishing line around the stems and then tied a knot around the screw. So now my leaves will not fall down. We'll add the rest of the botanicals in just a minute. But before we do that, let's move on to some pumpkins, because what is a fall display without a few pumpkins? Last week I used some of these beautiful plush velvet pumpkins in my room. I love this blue color, but we are going to switch that up today. I wanted to do a different color scheme in here. And so we're going to do an emerald green, like a really deep forest green, kind of like the color of my shirts. That's going to be the color scheme in this room. So I found some pumpkins, these beautiful velvet pumpkins. Again, they were on sale, which makes life so much nicer, because the price of these were lower than any other prices that I've seen at any other store. I picked up two of these. I got a large pumpkin and a medium-sized pumpkin. I wanted the stems on my pumpkin to be more like this, golder. It's pretty brown right now, so we're gonna switch that out really quick. I got some gold rub and buff in the color gold leaf and a tissue. I added the rub and buff to the tissue and then wiped it all over the stem. One thing I like about the rub and buff is you can add as much or as little as you want to get the coverage you want. I wanted it mostly gold, but I did want to see a little bit of the original color coming through. Once I was finished with the stem on the medium pumpkin, I moved on to the large pumpkin. I did the same thing with my gold rub and buff. I just added it to the tissue and wiped it all over the stem. The rub and buff dries almost immediately because it's more like a wax, so in no time I had the perfect color of stem for my dark emerald green pumpkins. Now we are going to embellish our pumpkins a little bit more because we can't leave them plain. So what I did was I purchased a package of these beautiful leaves at Hobby Lobby. Again, they were 40% off and there were 9 in a package, so it was super affordable. These wood leaves are fantastic because they have some cutouts where the veining is, and I really love the shape of these leaves. We are going to paint them, so I took them outside and I sprayed them in some Krylon gold spray paint. I painted each of these leaves. As you can see, some pumpkins are here too, and we'll get to those in just a second. But once all the leaves and the pumpkins were completely coated in the spray paint, I let them dry for an hour. Then I flipped them over and I painted the opposite side. Once everything was painted, I let it dry for an additional hour. We are going to attach our gold wood leaves to the pumpkins with some ribbon. I got this ribbon again at Hobby Lobby in the fall section. I love this sage velvet ribbon. I took a segment of this ribbon and I threaded it through the slots where the veining is in our leaves. Then I wrapped it around the stem of the pumpkin and tied it into a bow. Once I was finished with the first pumpkin, I moved on to the second pumpkin. I am using a different leaf this time, but I'm going to be doing the exact same thing. I just threaded that ribbon through the veining in the leaf, wrapped the ribbon around the pumpkin, and then tied it into a bow. It was not difficult at all to embellish these pumpkins. This stem looks so much better now. This velvet ribbon coordinates so beautifully with our velvet pumpkin, and the gold leaf in the center ties together our stem and a lot of other gold elements we're going to be putting on our fireplace display. But look at how beautiful our pumpkins look now. With a little bit of embellishment, we have taken them over the top. So we are going to put our pumpkins off to the side right now, and we are going to talk about the wood pumpkins. So because we had those leaves that had all that beautiful veining in it, I wanted some pumpkins to go along with that too. I did find a package of these wood pumpkins at Hobby Lobby. They are very plain though, and I didn't want them to be plain. I wanted them to have the same veining as our leaves did. So we are going to create some designs to go on our pumpkin, and I'm going to be doing that with my Creality Falcon 2. I'm going to be engraving a pumpkin onto our pumpkin. What I did was I just created this design and I dragged and dropped it over into Lightburn. It only took a couple of minutes for each of these pumpkins to get that additional engraved design on it. I love that we were able to take this plain, basic pumpkin and add a beautiful design to it. So now that our pumpkins have our design on it, we are going to paint them. So you saw earlier, I had already taken them outside and spray painted them in this gold spray paint, just like I did with the leaves. We are going to add these pumpkins and some other items to some large apothecary jars. I have two large, beautiful apothecary jars, and what we're going to do is add some mini pumpkins, some of those gold wood leaves, and our gold pumpkins inside of these apothecary jars. I just stacked them on top of each other. Once it was filled up to the top, I put the lid back on and I moved on to our medium-sized apothecary jar. Again, I filled that up with those plush mini pumpkins, wood leaves, and wood pumpkins. To tie these apothecary jars in with our pumpkins, I'm going to get some more of that velvet ribbon, thread it through another one of those leaves, and then wrap the ribbon around the top of the jar and tie it into a bow. This is such an inexpensive way to theme a jar that you already have. I'm sure many of you out there have jars, and all you need to do is fill them up with some decorative fall items, like these little pumpkins, whether they're plush pumpkins or wood pumpkins. Any fall item can be displayed in jars like this. These jars can be used all year long, but because we put autumn-themed objects inside, now we have a one-of-a-kind fall decoration. We almost have everything we need for our fireplace mantle, but something is missing, and so that means it's time for our thrift flip. Now, I headed over to my thrift store, and they always have fantastic prices on framed art. I found this beautiful frame there. It's a great size. I really like the detail on the inner portion of the frame. It was also a super great price. It was only $9.99. We're going to change the color of our frame. It's too dark right now, and it's actually really dusty. So what we need to do is remove everything that's inside of our frame. I took out the glass and then the inner decorative frame, and guess what, you guys? I thought it was gonna be like metal or wood. It's this flimsy plastic. So that was kind of a bummer. I was a little disappointed about that, but that's all right. We're not gonna reuse it again in this project anyway. So I just continued to take everything out until I had the basic frame. We want the color of the frame to coordinate with our gold leaves and pumpkins. So we're going to paint it in the same gold Krylon spray paint. So I took my frame outside and I sprayed it in this paint. I made sure that the top and the sides of the frame were completely coated in this gold spray paint. Once the surface had been saturated in the paint, I let it dry for 2 hours. The print that we had for summer was so pretty, but of course we need to theme our art to fall. Now this print is from my website. I absolutely love this picturesque setting with gorgeous fall leaves on the trees. The color scheme is perfect for a mantle display. It's neutral, but it also has a fall color scheme. Now that the paint is dry on our frame, it's time to put everything back inside. Now I wanted this print to take up the majority of the space on this frame. I didn't want a thick mat. So what I did was I cut a thin mat out of some cardstock, And after the glass was in, I added the mat. Then I took my beautiful fall print, placed that over the top of the mat, and then taped it down so it didn't shift when I replaced the back on the frame. All right, you guys, now we have everything we need to create our beautiful fireplace mantle display. So let's decorate. If you liked the projects that we're doing today, make sure you're subscribed. I share weekly videos on projects just like what we're doing today, and I would love to have you subscribe so you won't miss an episode. Okay, so this is how we are going to decorate our mantle. Now, you saw how I added these white stems of leaves first, and to that, I'm going to take our champagne picks. These leaves are so great. They are a fantastic contrast, both in sheen and in color. But there's a slight color variation, which is perfect. So I added a couple of picks around this as well. And then to coordinate with the green sage color that we have, I grabbed a couple of these sage leaves and I placed those sporadically throughout the greenery as well. As the focal point to the center of our greenery, I added 2 more of these gold wood leaves. They are a fantastic way to draw your eye into the center because of the intricate designs and the gold metallic. On this far side, I'm going to place our large pumpkin. Just gonna pop it right there, right on top of our greenery. And then to balance this out, I added the other pumpkin to the opposite side. And then right next to this pumpkin, I've got this little teeny mini gray pumpkin. These are some pumpkins that are inside of our apothecary jars, and I'm gonna place that right next to our large green pumpkin. In the center, we have our beautiful European fall print. I placed that on top of a frame holder. This is the focal point of this entire mantelscape. Art is such a great way to theme your decor seasonally. It's also a fantastic way to tie your color scheme together. This print has all of the colors that we are using in our display, and it's a fantastic way to tie everything together. And then all the way at the end over here, I added my 2 apothecary jars. I've got my large apothecary jar on the outside and the smaller one right next to it. This is a great way to balance out the space. It's tall, but it's got the same amount of weight as our print does on the other side. And these apothecary jars just look so cute, filled with all of our fall items. Our mantelscape is complete, and I think it looks so stunning. I love the color scheme. We went with darker tones today. We went with this dark emerald green, and I love it. I think it's perfect for fall. The light grays, the whites, and the golds are also a great way to offset the dark green. The botanicals give our mantle that outdoor autumn touch. The velvet ribbon ties everything together. This is a very unique display that was easy to create and very affordable as well. Now that everything is done up here, I thought it would be fun to have your eye drawn down to the hearth area. So we're gonna add a few lanterns down there. These lanterns are large in scale. The white pearlescent sheen on these lanterns is gorgeous. And what I did was I filled them with some thick leaves. These are wood leaves that I purchased at Target a few years ago. I also have some wood acorns that are from Home Goods. And then in the larger one, I added a white pumpkin because it had more space. So these kind of mimic our jars up here because they're glass and they're filled with fall items. And then one more way I can tie these lanterns in with the mantelscape design is again with some of that green ribbon. So what I did was I tied it around the handle on each of the lanterns and then got one of these light sage green leaves and I poked that through the center of the ribbon. These lanterns are such a fun addition to this fireplace mantle. So not only do we have our beautiful designs on top, but now it's a complete wall of fall, which we absolutely love. It gets me so excited for this fabulous cooler weather, the upcoming holidays, and the joy of the autumn season.